That morning I walked into my side yard and found a bare slab of concrete where a transformer had stood for almost 18 years. Renata Kessler was leaning against her silver SUV with her arms folded, and when she saw my face, she smiled the way people smile when they think they've finally won something. "We finally got that eyesore out of the neighborhood," she said. Before I could answer, the row of houses behind her went dark. A minute later, another row went with it. Then all of Cedar Hollow Estates fell into silence, 200 homes at once, like someone had reached out and turned a dial to 0. When the utility engineer arrived 40 minutes later, he stood at the empty pad, looked at the cut cable ends taped off in the dirt, and asked Renata exactly one question: who authorized the removal of the transformer feeding this entire subdivision? The smile came off her face for the first time since I'd known her. If you like watching a homeowners association dig its own grave with nothing but pure certainty, stick around, because you are going to want to hear how Renata tried to talk her way out of this one. Tell me in the comments, have you ever dealt with an HOA that thought its authority reached further than its actual paperwork? Because that's the whole story right there. And if you enjoy watching quiet, patient people finally get proven right, stay with me and consider subscribing. This one earns it. My name is Marcus Whitfield. I'm 51, a widower, and I've spent almost 30 years doing industrial electrical work. Substations, water treatment plants, cold storage facilities, the kind of jobs where getting it wrong doesn't just cost money, it costs fingers. I know what a transformer does. I know what a switchgear cabinet is for. I know exactly what happens when someone who doesn't understand either one decides to open it anyway. I don't say any of that to sound impressive. It's just the shape of my working life. And it's the reason I was the only person standing in that yard who understood what was actually buried under that slab of concrete, and the only one nobody wanted to listen to. I bought this place, 4 acres and a farmhouse my wife Dana fell in love with on site, almost 20 years before Cedar Hollow existed. Back then the land behind us was nothing but a soybean field and a gravel road the county never got around to paving. Dana picked the house because of the light in the kitchen window in the evening. I picked it because there was room out back for a proper workshop with its own service panel. She passed 6 years ago. Cancer, slow, then not slow at all. I stayed on afterward because leaving felt like agreeing the good part of my life was finished, and I wasn't ready to agree to that. A developer bought the land behind us not long after. A man in a polo shirt stood in my driveway one afternoon and explained very reasonably that the cheapest way to bring power into the new subdivision ran straight through the northeast corner of my property. He offered to buy the corner outright. I told him no, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life arguing with strangers about a fence line. So instead of selling, I signed a recorded utility easement. Real lawyers drew it up, the county filed it, and it gave the power company the right to place distribution equipment on a small concrete pad on my land, with permanent access to maintain it. In return, I got a genuine upgrade, a stronger service than one that had fed my house since the 70s, and I paid a portion of the cost myself, a little over $9,000, which was real money to me at the time. I kept that receipt in the same folder as the easement for 18 years. That's why I always called it my transformer, even though I never once believed I owned the steel. The utility owned it and operated it, but it sat on my dirt, inside an easement with my name on it, on a pad I'd helped pay for. You listen to something hum through a workshop wall for 18 years. You start using words like mine, whether you're technically entitled to or not. Cedar Hollow grew into roughly 200 homes, stone facades, 3 car garages, a clubhouse with a resort pool, and a stacked stone entrance sign lit up at night. My place sat off to the side of all that, a little stubborn and a little out of place, and for years it didn't matter to anybody. Then, about a year and a half before the morning, the lights went out. Renata Kessler became president of the Cedar Hollow Homeowners Association. I met her that spring. I had my truck backed up to the workshop with a spool of cable in the bed, coveralls on, grease past my elbows, and she came up my gravel drive in a cream blazer holding a leather folio like it was a badge of office. She looked at the truck. She looked at the coveralls. She looked at my face, and I watched something settle behind her eyes, slow and deliberate, like sediment finding the bottom of a jar. "Are you the maintenance contractor?" she asked. "I live here." I said. She turned and looked at the house. The porch I'd rebuilt with my own hands, the tin roof, the rolled-up bay door on the shop. Then she said, "Here," and let the word sit there just long enough for me to feel exactly what she meant by it. Within a month, Renata discovered the fact that would eat at her for the next 18 months. My property had never been platted into Cedar Hollow. It wasn't bound by the covenants. She couldn't fine me for the wrong shade of paint. She couldn't dictate what hours my workshop ran. And worst of all, from where she stood, a piece of infrastructure serving her carefully curated neighborhood sat on land she had absolutely no authority over. 1 week after that first visit, I opened my mailbox and found a letter on association letterhead with a heading in bold capitals, "Notice of Unauthorized Electrical Equipment." I responded politely. I attached a copy of my deed with the corner circled, and a copy of the recorded easement with the relevant clauses highlighted. I explained that the equipment sat on my property inside a utility easement, that the association had no ownership interest in either the land or the equipment, and that any concerns should go directly to the power company. I mailed it certified and kept the green return card. 11 days of quiet. Then the letters started again, this time with demands. Take down the security fencing around the pad. Remove the warning signage because it was, in the association's words, visually inconsistent with the community aesthetic. Provide a key so grounds crews could access the area for landscaping. And finally, in the 4th letter, relocate the transformer entirely because it was visible from the road leading to the clubhouse. I sent the deed and the easement back a second time. A third time. Nothing changed except the tone, which got colder with each round, like she was writing to someone she'd already decided didn't deserve an answer, only a warning. That's where it stood the week before everything else started, before the survey stakes, before the contractor who walked away, before a woman in a cream blazer decided that being right about her own neighborhood meant she was right about mine too. A week and a half later, I found 4 orange survey stakes driven into the grass beside the transformer enclosure, pink flagging tape snapping in the wind, set out in a neat rectangle 15 feet north of where the pad had always been. I called Derek Voss, the association's facilities manager, and to my surprise, he actually answered. When I asked about the stakes, he took a long time choosing his words and finally said the board was studying some landscape improvements in that area. I asked him plainly whether landscape improvements involved relocating an energized piece of utility equipment. He said he'd have to check and hung up faster than a man usually hangs up on a neighbor.